Can you just quickly high-five your neighbor and say, great to see you in church tonight? Just high-five your neighbor. If you're new here tonight, a really warm welcome to you. I'm Olly, I'm the Vicar here at St. Matt's, and it's great to have you with us. I had a little message that I prepared for today, but then I was driving down. I was here for Christmas Day, and then I went to stay with my mum in Oxfordshire, and then on the drive back from Oxfordshire yesterday, I was looking at, I quite like my social media, and I'm trying to be a trendy vicar. I'm over 40 now, so I'm sort of just clinging on. And as I was going through social media, I love Instagram. I'm enjoying Instagram, and I was scrolling through, and I noticed it last year actually, that you can do this top 9. And for those of you on Instagram will know about this. There's one of the layouts of putting your photographs on Instagram, and you can cut the page up in such a way that you can display 9 photos in one image, just the way the framing works. And it's quite good having that sort of restriction in a sense, because it then forces you to whittle down either the trip you've been on, or in this context, it was the whole year. What would your year look like if you distilled it into 9 photographs? And I was doing this in the car, and I should have been chatting to my wife, but I was on social, and was going through it. And it was just a really helpful reflection, actually, for me, going through the photographs and trying to work out, if I had to distill my year into 9 images, how would that sum up my year? Actually, my brother-in-law, who is half American, I don't know if it's an American tradition or just in his family, that every Christmas when they get together, every person has to bring 10 images, I think, with them to describe their year. And they have a little time when they darken the lights and they put it on a projector, and each family member goes through their year, and they get to celebrate each other's successes and draw alongside each other in those times that were more challenging. As I went through my sort of highlights reel, so to speak, from the year, the one word that came out for it, as I was looking through these different things that have happened in my life over the year, was just gratitude. I think if I look back over the year, I'm just grateful for the things that have happened. Now, that might not be the case for all of us. I think it was the Queen a few years ago who just had a horrible year, and she called it, as only the Queen probably would, in Latin, her annus horribilis. It was her horrible year. And for some of you looking back over the year that we're coming out the end of, you might think, I just can't wait for 2019 to start because 2018 wasn't great. And actually, one of the issues with social media is it can only be a highlights reel. And actually, of course, all of our lives, when we look under the bonnet, there's challenging aspects as well. But I want to share with you guys tonight, because as I put my sort of 9 top photos over this year, I sort of sense God speaking to me through it. Speaking to me for some stuff that for 2018, but also some things for me to hold on to as I head into 2019. And I think hopefully God might speak to you through them as well. And maybe even in this little window that we have between Christmas and the new year kicking off, I'd encourage all of us just to use that as a reflective time, just to sort of draw breath before the year gets up and running. Because once the year starts, it just sort of sets off at a cracking rate. And I think this time in between is just a good opportunity to take stock, hopefully to adjust accordingly, and then set out hopefully on the right path for 2019 with a few rocks in our diary, so that when we're here this time next year or wherever we might be, we might say, wow, look at the journey I've been on, or rather look at what God has done in and through my life over the year. So strap in, and hopefully this isn't too self-indulgent. Hopefully you'll be able to get something out of it, and hopefully I'm not too much like some old uncle or something who's just reeling through my sort of holiday reel, but it'll be over in 20 minutes or so, or whatever they put on the screen for me. The first photo that I looked at as I was going through my screen was just my family. This is my wife, Ali, and our 2 little kiddies, Hannah and Tabitha. And I think that was the first thing that I went through the highlights reel and the list of the year, and there were different photos over the year, but just family. Just so grateful for my family. Grateful for Ali, and just she's just great. She's a cracker, and our 2 little kiddies. And I don't know about you, but I can so easily take for granted those who are nearest and dearest to me. And there's something nice about that, actually, when you're with family, or for some of you who aren't married and don't have kiddies, please don't dial out at this moment. Hopefully all of us have some people who we would call family. In fact, that's the great thing about the church, is we all get to be family together. And within this wider family, hopefully there are 1 or 2 people who will be really close to, our closest people. And who are those people that we're closest to, and to appreciate them? Stephen Covey, who wrote a very famous book called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he said this about the business world. He said business leaders, highly successful business leaders, he said they treat their staff how they would like their staff to treat their best customers. treat their staff how they would like their staff to treat their best customers. And I think you can apply that same logic to family. I can often take my family for granted, and yet they're the most treasured thing in my world. And so therefore, I should treat my family how I would like us as a family to treat our most honored guests. So if I had the Queen bowling up at my house, wow, we would just treat the Queen, wow, come in, great to see you. And actually, wouldn't it be great if we treated our family like that? If I treated my kids and my wife and didn't get sort of short and critical and grumpy. I mean, the nice thing about a family, actually, you don't have to be on best behavior the whole time. There is something nice about just slopping on a pair of jeans or whatever it is and just chilling out. But wouldn't it be amazing if we really treasured and appreciated those who were closest to us, like we would like them to appreciate guests in our home? And the little verse that came to mind, particularly in relation to my wife, was this, Ephesians 5:25. St. Paul, he was teaching this church about how to relate to each other. He says, husbands. And you could change the word husband for wife or brother or sister or housemate. Husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. Christ loved the church, loved you and me so much that he was willing to die for us. And St. Paul says that's the sort of model that you're meant to emulate in your relationships with each other, particularly with those who are nearest and dearest to you. What would it look like for me to be loving my wife in the way that Christ loved me? Loving my kids, and again, chat with Ali, she'll tell you I don't live up to that. But with the help of Christ, with his spirit within me, I'm beginning to enter into that sort of life. So that when my wife asks me to do something, or actually before she asks me to do something, I begin to take the bins out or whatever it might be. I can so easily in family life begin to opt out, but Jesus never opted out. He always opted in. He was the first to make the move. What would it look like in your life and my life if we're beginning to treasure and appreciate and love those who are closest to us in the way that Christ did it? Second picture that came up on my little top 10 was our dream team. This was a lovely little reflection. Hannah, who's our church center manager here and my assistant and keeps us all on the straight and narrow along with Jesus. She organized our dream team party with a whole team. And it was just a great way of thanking all the helpers who make St. Matt's what it is. And I had to sort of pinch myself looking at this pic because we kicked off here only 2 years ago and we had about 50 people when we started. 2/3 of them after the first term decided that the worship was a little bit loud and I appreciate that sometimes. And they decided to go up to one of the local churches up the road. In fact, that was in a sense our first sort of church plant. We didn't have any bust-ups or fallouts. We were all in it together. So we actually started with not that many people and then we got off the ground and now there's about 500 here every Sunday. And many of it happens by a group of people who just work hard, who pray hard, who give well, who love well, who smile. And then we like to have a party once a year just to celebrate them. And this is just a proportion of them. I think there's 164 people now on what we call our dream team. The reason we call it the dream team sounds a little bit American. I mean, it is American because I got it from an American. But the thing I liked about it is that actually God has put a dream in our heart of what it would look like for this city to be transformed in Jesus' name. And actually, he's given a dream for each one of us as well. And actually, a dream, unless it begins to actually hit the ground where we're running, it just stays a dream. And we're trying to turn a dream into a reality. And these are some of the people who are part of the dream team. And we only have one team here, this dream team. But within that team, there are different areas, different lanes for us to run in. Whether it's the worship team or the guys who are hosting or serving coffees or praying or helping our kids to grow up and follow Jesus in their generation. Or whether it's the student team or whether it's our care home visiting teams or whether it's our small group leaders. Just everyone has a lane to run in. And I've been getting excited as I looked at this photo. I thought, wow, this is the dream team that it was last year. What's it going to look like this year and going ahead? Wouldn't it be great for this to be, going to need a bigger screen to fit in the dream team? What's the lane that you and me are going to run in as a new year kicks off? The verse that came to mind was this, 1 Corinthians 12:27. St. Paul said this. He was just trying to remind them who they are as a church. He said, now you, that is everyone, you're the body of Christ. And each one of you is a part of it. And in fact, I took my family, and our life isn't normally this dull, but this afternoon, we spent time playing a game. And then I said, guys, do you want to hear my talk? Because they didn't hear my talk. And they're like, yeah, Daddy, we'd love to. So we had the pictures on our screen, and we were watching that picture of the dream team. And there was just something about the joy of that team. If you want to know what Jesus looks like, you're meant to look at the church. And I think actually, not being arrogant or anything, but as you begin to look at us, actually we're starting to look a little bit like the body of Christ. Something of the warmth of Christ, something of the life of Christ, something of the joy of Christ. And in the body of Christ, every part has a part to play. And I know many of you already are on the dream team, but actually this is a great opportunity just to sort of review that and look into the year ahead. If you're visiting from a different church, you're on the macro dream team. What's the area of the life of the church that you're involved in? What I love about the church is there is a lane for everyone to run in, and then we begin to sort of own that and run in it. What's going to be your lane this year? In fact, I love watching sports, but I think actually playing sport is so much better. When you get in the game, you begin to experience more out of it. And church, on one level, it's a spectator sport, but more importantly, it's a game that we all get to play. In fact, whenever my faith begins to run dry, I realize that probably I haven't actually been serving anyone. So often I'll literally leave my house and go and find some random person to pray for in the street. And they're like, excuse me. But actually, as I pray for them, they often get encouraged because they begin to encounter the Spirit of God. I get encouraged and the Lord gets the glory. And the whole faith sort of level begins to rise. Family, dream team. Thirdly, by the way, I'll speed up in a moment. The third image is my wife and I. This is Ali. She's my better half, and she's brighter. She's genuinely brighter, actually, and she's better looking. And we had an opportunity this year to go to Alabama in America. I follow this church in America that I've followed for a number of years, actually. I just find them so inspiring. It's a church called Church of the Highlands in Birmingham, Alabama. They have about 45,000 people in their church. They broadcast all of their services into the prisons in Alabama. And in the prisons, they have their small groups. So like these prisoners are in small groups. They're serving one another. They're not doing church to them. In fact, they have church meeting in the prisons. I'm like, that's so cool. They're ministering. And I just get inspired by them. And it was a dream in my heart, actually, to be able to go there. And last year, that dream became a reality. It was just an amazing trip. I've been ordained for 10 years as a vicar. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool to do something? And I can't remember how anyway, we managed to scrape the money together. And we went on that trip. We actually went there, went to this conference. I really know how to treat my wife, take her to a church conference. But actually, we had a whale of a time. And there we are, eating Southern American ribs. It's great. Apologies to vegetarians. But actually, this could convert you to meat eating because they were so good. But what I reflected on there is the Christian life is meant to be an adventure-filled life. If Jesus ever makes your world or my world smaller, it's not Jesus. Jesus said, I've come that you may have life and life in all its fullness. That doesn't mean life that's immunity from suffering and difficulty. No, not at all. Of course that's going to happen. In fact, if you're a Christian, you're probably going to suffer in more ways than other people perhaps. But actually it should be an adventure-filled life. There should be an excitement about it. When you read the Gospels, when you read the Acts of the Apostles, loads of stuff were kicking off. People were being healed. People were selling houses and giving into the thing. Just there was a lot of life and vitality and excitement. And that's the sort of life that I've signed up for. And actually, as I scrolled through the photos and came across this photo from Alabama, it was almost as if the Lord was saying, Ollie, keep living for that adventure. And what are going to be the adventures that we're all going to have together in this new year? What are the adventures that are going to be in your diary in 2019? So it's not just another year. It doesn't have to be flying and spending money to go to America, but what's the dream that God's going to put in your heart? What's the adventure that he wants you to have? Because following Jesus is meant to be an adventure. The verse that came to my mind when this one was Psalm 37 verse 4 says this, take delight. Can you say delight? Take delight in the Lord. I.e., get excited about Jesus. Get excited about God. Relish being in his presence. Get John in and to begin to lead some worship and feel faith rise. Take delight in the Lord. Get excited about Jesus. And what will he do? And he will give you the desires of your heart. He wants to give us the desires of our heart, not necessarily for a Lamborghini, although he might, if that's really the desire of your heart and that's in line with him. Why not? I mean, he doesn't want to scrimp. He's a generous God. He's an abundant God. He wants to bless us. Take delight in the Lord, and he'll give you the desires of your heart. What are the desires in your heart? Start dreaming big. There's no reticence on God's behalf. He wants to do stuff in our life, to have an expansive life. Fourthly, turn to your neighbor and say, wow, we're in for a long night. That's it. Turn to your neighbor and say, we're in for a long night. This was such a cool pic as I went through my photos. This was the photograph from our second anniversary celebration here as a church. If you're new here, we've only been going for 2 years as a church. We had a load of pews in here, and I love pews, but we wanted to create a more versatile worship space, so we cleared them out. In fact, the old pew ends we inserted in the wall over there, and that sound desk, my wife designed it actually. It's made from the old pews in the cafe area. It's a very good use for pews. And the others, I'm not sure where they are, firewood or something, but anyway. And makes very good firewood, actually. But this was really cool. It was our second anniversary. And on our second anniversary, we didn't just want to have a party, but we wanted to fling open our doors of our church. In fact, from Tri-Church, we grew by 100 people just as a result of that Sunday this term. So cool in that. And I think through that picture, God was wanting to remind me that he wants to do loads for us. He has a big heart for this city and a big heart for this region. And he's not holding back. All he's waiting for is a community of people who are saying, count me in, Lord, count me in. And I think the thing, do you want to, let's have a little look at the verse. The verse that I was reminded of, Ephesians 3:20. God is able to do immeasurably. Can you say immeasurably? Immeasurably, i.e. you can't measure it, immeasurably more than all we can ask or imagine. I mean, that's just an extraordinary thought in itself. In fact, you can't get your brain around that thought because it's immeasurable. God has so much for you and me, and I think some of it rests on the fact, when I was looking at that picture, of course, on one level, humanly speaking, there were a lot of people involved. But actually, there's no way that just a group of people could have done what God has sort of done here, because it's God working in and through his people beginning to do immeasurably more. And what I was encouraged by through it is I think all God is waiting for is a community of people, of individuals who are prepared to sort of stand up and step up, to be confident and courageous people. In fact, we had that word this morning, courage. Can you say courage? The word courage, and you will have probably heard me say this before, comes from the Latin word coraticum, which means the heart. It's where you get the French word cœur for the heart. There are so many things in life where we're going to need great courage. For me, it's sort of trying to lead the church here, to have courage in that. There's many things that would want to discourage me, to take courage out. What are the things that you're needing courage for? Because we need courage to stand strong, to be confident. The word confidence comes from the Latin confidere, with faith. It's not arrogance. Arrogance is a horrible thing. Arrogance puts other people down, and often the people who are being arrogant actually are quite isolated people in themselves. They're just not very happy people. Confidence, though, begins to beget confidence. When you're confident in something, people begin to get drawn into it and just that sense. And God is looking for a community of people who have been courageous. Courageous in their parenting, courageous in their marriages, courageous in their workplaces, courageous in their studies, making a difference in this world. God wants to do immeasurably more than all we can ask or imagine. What's the big vision that you've got at the moment? Have you got a big vision for your life? And beginning to try and step out and walk into that, discovering that there's solid ground on the other side. Doesn't mean to say it's all going to be plain sailing, but I think God is looking for a people who are going to begin to latch onto his big vision that he has for our lives, for this city and this region, or wherever you might have come from. The next one, the fifth one. So when we went to, it is becoming a little bit like a sort of holiday show reel, isn't it? I'm so sorry. I'll be through it in a moment. When we went to America, the pastor of this Church of the Highlands is a guy called Chris Hodges. And funny enough, I'd met him at a conference or heard him at a conference in London about 5 years ago. And when we went to America, Ali and I actually got to meet him like very briefly. And then in the airport, just as we were heading out, I was sitting there with Ali and we were about to get on our plane. And suddenly Chris Hodges popped in the airport. And I went, Ali, look, it's Chris Hodges. And Ali was like, yeah, well, great. And she wasn't quite as excited as me. But I'm like, Ali, come on, it's Chris. And I went over. He was like, no, she was like, don't disturb me. I'm like, no, I've got to go and say hello. So I went, Chris, hi. And I could see just for a moment, like a second, I could see in his eyes, it was like, oh no, another person. But he clicked into sort of Christian minister mode straight away. He's like, oh, great to see you. I was like, can I get a selfie? He's like, yeah, have a selfie. This man, without realizing it over the years, he's basically been my pastor, a spiritual father, and a mentor, even though I've never properly met him. And even in this little moment in the airport, I mean, it wasn't really a proper meeting. I connected and I said hi and just thanked him. But actually, through this image, it reminded me that often we never know the impact and the influence we might have on people. People we may not have never properly met in our lives before. You and me, we might never have like he does, on YouTube or whatever it is. But all of us are interacting with people all day, every day. Our lives are meant to be lives of an example and can inspire other people. People who we might never even imagine that we've inspired. The verse that came to mind for me when I thought about this was 1 Corinthians 11:1. Paul said this. He wasn't being arrogant, but he said, guys, follow my example as I follow the example of Christ. And for me, following from afar, I followed the life of this guy, Chris Hodges. I've also tried to follow the life of St. Paul as they help me in following the life of Jesus. Your life and my life has influence. We have impact. We might not feel that we're very significant, but actually, even the way we shop, the people who we have interactions with in our daily lives, our colleagues, our family, people are being influenced and are watching all the time. And we can have phenomenal impact on people's lives who we might never come into contact with until we reach heaven and they say, I just want to thank you so much for the way that you were. In fact, when I was at school, I was a bit of a terrorist at school. I gave my teachers such a hard time. But now, the way I live now is often on the back of their example then. And in fact, some of them, my old headmaster and my old housemaster, I actually wrote to them after I got ordained and I said, I'm so sorry that I was such a terrorist at school, but thank you for your example and your inspiration. Who are you influencing? The way you head into this year, the example of your life will have more impact than you could possibly dare imagine, either positive or negative. Just the way that you are, the way that I am, the way that we deal with people, the way that we speak about people, the way that we speak to people, the way that we interact our lives have example and influence. And I'm grateful for my pastor friend or friend from afar, Chris Hodges. He's had such an impact on my life and actually on this church here. Number 6. Can you just turn to your neighbor and say 4 to go? Just say 4 to go. 4 to go. This is our staff team. We went last summer. We had a staff day away and we went up to Perranporth and we just spent a day together worshiping and praying and eating and just being together. And then we did a little surf lesson together. This is some of the team. I think half of them decided they wanted to surf and the other half just took a break and went for a walk up the beach. But what I thought as I looked at that, I just thought, I was grateful to God actually for the little team that he's put together here, the team of people, and they're hardworking. They put up with me. We're all trying to sort of hang out together. We're trying to be friends. We're not trying to be friends. We are friends. We're trying to be family together. In many ways, we don't really have a clue. Johnny certainly doesn't. But we're just sort of encouraging each other in that. And it's such an adventure to do that. Who are the people that you're doing life with? You might think, well, the place that I work, they're not as fun as you guys seem to be, but actually you can be the fun maker. The thing I love about our team where we're growing in there, on one level I've got the role of vicar or whatever, but actually we're all in it together. Actually, anyone can say, anyone want tea today? I'll make tea today. Someone else brings in a cake. Everyone's sort of taking ownership of that. And I was just thankful to God for the team that he's blessed us with. But also I was inspired by it thinking, what's it going to look like this year as we head off together? We're going to be a people who are committed to working hard. We're a people who are committed to praying, to giving, to serving each other, to encouraging each other, to believing the best for each other, to offer to make a cup of tea for each other, to serve each other as that staff team together. Who's your little team? And how are you going to be a culture creator, someone who opts in rather than opts out? I so often find in my life I can sort of sit on the sidelines and take pot shots, criticize people, whether it's the Prime Minister or anyone else. And I sense God say, why don't you get in the game, buddy? Why don't you start being a culture creator? Start changing the atmosphere there. Even if your boss is dreadful or your housemates are irritating, actually start to dial in. Start to create the sort of team that you would like to be part of, even if they're not quite there yet. My seventh little picture was my niece. So this little girl, she's called Tasuki. My sister, they've got interesting names for their children. And Tasuki, her other name is Beatrice. And she was born early this year. And again, it was coming back to this family thing, actually. that family is so important. Again, whether you have immediate family or not, there's something about those closest of relationships to invest in them, to spend time with them, particularly that sort of wider network of people. In my family, not all of our family would necessarily call themselves Christian, but I'm still called to love them, to serve them. In fact, the verse that came to mind when I was thinking about this, Exodus 20:12, it's one of the, I think it's the 5th commandment in the 10 commandments in the Old Testament, says this, honor. Can you say honor? Yeah, honor your father and your mother. And I think you could actually extrapolate that to say your family, your brothers, your sisters, even the ones you don't like, your aunt, your uncle, the ones that really irritate you, the ones that have been difficult to you. Honor your father and your mother so that you may live long in the land the Lord your God is giving you. There's something about that honoring and treasuring and believing in and praying for those nearest and dearest to us. In fact, those are the only people who probably really can pray for them because you know the different situations there. And a little mental note to myself, I can so easily, again, take even my wider family for granted. And one of my little to-do, one of my action points for this year is to get dates in the diary to go and spend time with my beautiful little niece. She's such a joy bringer. She's got a great smile on her face. And her little brother as well. Just to spend time with them this year, to treasure those who God has put into our lives. Eighthly, 2 to go. Tell your neighbor, say 2 to go. 2 to go. Are you still alive? You doing okay? Well done. This is my small group, so I'm so grateful for this small group. We try and do community life together here. In fact, you can't really do the Christian life alone. In fact, it's not created to be done alone. We're meant to do it with God and with other people. And I've been in this small group Monday nights. It's called Faith and Fitness. And I've mentioned it a couple of times here. It's been such a lifesaver for me, actually. There are some girls in the group as well. They just weren't in this picture. And in fact, the girls have actually been a lot fitter than the guys. Actually, that's unhelpful. They've been a lot fitter than the guys, more pull-ups, more press-ups, and there's a plank. We do the plank. We do a plank pray-off at the end, and we're like that, and we're like, okay, let's send the prayer around. And someone's like, dear Lord, well, we really thank you, Lord. I'm like, get on with it, in Jesus' name, amen. So we're in the plank off. But this group's been great, you know. And I've been so grateful for them because we've raised faith levels together and we've raised fitness levels together and we've raised friendship levels together. The writer of the Hebrews says this. Next verse, please. Hebrews 10:25. He says, let us not neglect meeting together. In the church, there are obviously some people like, oh, I don't feel like small group tonight. Oh, I'm a bit tired tonight. I won't go to church today. No, he says you mustn't do that because you'll get discouraged in life. You need to be together with a group of men and women who can spur each other on, who can build each other up. This isn't just about having good friends. You need to have good friends. You need a friendship group, but you also need a wider group. Actually, you need to rub shoulders alongside people who you might not necessarily be in your natural friendship group because God wants to do stuff in that. He wants to begin, like John was saying, he wants to begin to chisel some of those things off in us. Actually, all the people in that group are lovely people, and actually I'm learning stuff about it as we do life together with each other. But let us encourage. Can you say encourage? Let us encourage. Let's put courage into each other through spending time with each other. In fact, the guy who runs this group, Dino's here tonight, and he always comes with a little verse. Comes in with his ruck, says, oh, I've got a verse for us tonight. And he says, oh, I've had one heck of a week or something. He's not Cockney, but anyway. I've had one heck of a week. And he then shares, but I found this in Romans. And then anyone else got a word and then we head out. But what's your small group going to be this term? Who's going to, forget the word small group, who's the community that you're going to do together? As well as your friendship group, who are also going to be the people who are going to pull around you and say, we're going to do life together for this season, and we're going to see what God's going to do in and through each other. Whether it's a running group or a knitting group or a surfing group, who are going to dive deep into prayer, or you're going to be a walking group, whatever it might be, we're just going to bind together. We're going to encourage each other this term and see what God's going to do in and through us. The final little one is Christmas. We had an amazing Christmas, and actually huge thanks to John and his team. They did amazing on the worship. We had musicians and singing and the prayers and the hosting. Over this Christmas period, just on our 4 carol services, I think it was, Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, we had 1,576 people here. It's just extraordinary. It's just a wonderful thing, people beginning to hear, hopefully, and experience something of the good news of Jesus. But as I scrolled through some of the photos of our Christmas services, the thing that really grabbed my attention was really the point of Christmas. In fact, I said to my daughter this morning, as I came into land on this one, as I preached it to them this afternoon, the reason for the season. And she said, Daddy, that rhymes. I'm like, yeah, you're getting it. Jesus, the reason for the season. And I sensed the Lord through it saying to me, Ollie, You'll have lots of things going on this year, but just keep me front and center. Be the one who you're connecting with throughout the year. Make sure you carve time away with just you and me this year to connect with me, because I'm going to be your source. I'm going to be your truth. I'm going to be your way. When life gets stressful, I'm going to be your solid ground. The verse that came to mind when I thought about it was one of the verses that we used for one of our Christmas services, John 1:4. John said this, and John had experienced life with Jesus. He'd been around with Jesus. He was an old man when he was then writing this, and he'd known Jesus, never to let him down. And he said this about Jesus: in him was life. Can you say life? Yeah, you and me are going to need life this year. In him was life, and that life was the light of mankind, the light. Can you say light? Yeah, there's going to be some dark times ahead this year, unfortunately. I don't want to be a doom monger, but there will be. On the international level, there'll be some dark things. There'll be some dark things in your own life, some difficult times, some challenging times. But I can guarantee, as you draw close to Jesus, you'll begin to experience some of his light, because he's the light of the world. He can begin to lighten things. He can begin to help us to see the way ahead for our lives. He can warm our hearts and encourage us. Keep Jesus the reason, not only for the season, but for this year and for your life. So that's my little top 9 for this year. And maybe you might like to, as you have this window of opportunity between Christmas and New Year, just to think about your top 9. Again, it might not be a highlights reel like mine. It might be a lowlights reel. And you can just give that to the Lord. There's some lowlights in my life as well over this year that I've given to the Lord. And just prepare yourself for what lies ahead in this new year. Would you like to stand?